G'day, Shaylas and blokes. You might be familiar with today's guest. So I had a marvelous interview with Emma from mmmEnglish. And today's lesson is an excerpt from that interview that I think could help you a lot on your English learning journey. And after you finish it, be sure to check out the full interview with Emma for free by clicking the link down in the description. Emma, a warm welcome to Beyond Borders.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And for you newcomers, this real-lifer, Belu from Argentina, says that our lessons have helped them to overcome their fear of speaking. We are excited to join you on your English learning journey too, and help you every week to understand fast native speech, to be understood by anyone, and to even connect to the world. But we can only do that if you hit the subscribe button and the bell down below. Now, let's begin the lesson.
Using English as the tool that connects us, it is about understanding the world, understanding different perspectives, understanding and learning truths about different cultures and different people. I think we have been, for a long time, fed information from certain, generic sources like the news or, through politics and that kind of thing. And we come to our own conclusions, often ingrained in us since we were very young, about different people, different cultures, different ways of life. And I think that
Totally.
The more that we genuinely and deeply connect with each other, and obviously language is the most powerful way of doing that, we get to reimagine or re-experience the world on our own terms. And, often that's quite eye-opening.
Yeah, definitely it's a big goal that we have as well, is that through connecting people from different places, you're able to come to your own conclusions about what's true and what's in some sense a stereotype, or what is something that you've been lied to about, or maybe lie is kind of a strong word, but at the very least that maybe you've been misinformed about. So I think that can be so powerful when you're using your English as a vehicle, as you've said, to start connecting with other people and discovering kind of the truth about different parts of the world, and using that to inform your own ideas about the world and your worldview. I was curious, what does real-world English fluency mean for you?
It's really, the question now is what is real-world English? Because 75% of the world who speaks English are non-native speakers. And so when we talk about real-world English, we aren't just talking about standard American, standard British, Australian English at all. We're talking about this incredible, diverse mix of people and experience and accent and cultures. It really starts to filter into something that's so much bigger than just a language for me. And so real world English is continually expanding, I think, and becoming more open, more accepting, and more perhaps curious about the other types of English speakers in the world. And I think that's a really exciting thing for English learners.
That is exciting, I think, especially because so many learners, when they think about using their English, they tend to think about, I'm going to speak to an American, or I'm going to speak to a person from the UK or from Australia, or whatever the case is. But nowadays, obviously, depending where you work, but if you're working in any international company, it's much more likely that you're going to be using your English with someone from Germany or from Japan or from Thailand or wherever that isn't going to actually be a native speaker. And it might actually become more the minority of speaking your English that's going to be with those native speakers. So that's very exciting. I like that you say it that way, but it's almost you need to be training yourself as well to not just be able to understand one type of English, or not just saying English as American or British, but being able to see it as a global language in some sense, and needing to prepare yourself, right, for that reality of the language.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Even the idea of just obsessing over or focusing on a particular accent locks you in, to a certain way of life, a certain experience, a certain limited or finite set of opportunities, where by exposing yourself to a much richer or diverse range of accents and English speakers, your opportunity to interact, engage with, connect with people, all around the world is so much greater than by restricting yourself to just one, or prioritizing one.
Yeah, I imagine in some sense, at some point, it's going to become more that we native speakers, like in order to participate on a global scale, we're going to have to be like developing these skills even more so than the people coming from non-native speaking countries that have, along the way of learning the language, have had to also deal with these cross-cultural sort of challenges. So
absolutely.
I think that's something that's really important, is that we're able to bring that back to the native population.
Now remember that this is just a small taste of the full interview with Emma. You can listen to it absolutely free anywhere that you enjoy podcasts. However, what I would recommend is that you download our RealLife app and listen to it there. It is the only place where you can listen to all of our podcasts with the full transcripts, so you don't miss anything. Plus, you get definitions for all the most important vocabulary. That's not all. On the RealLife app, at the touch of a button, you can connect to another learner in a different part of the world for a fun and dynamic conversation. And this is all 100% free. So improve your real-world listening and speaking now by downloading the app. Just search for RealLife English in the Apple app or Google Play Store, or simply click the link up here or down in the description below. See you there.
When you're speaking with another non-native English speaker, you still have that opportunity to ask that question, and if neither of you know, you have the opportunity to find out together, and you get to create an experience around learning that thing. You don't get given the thing, you have to find it yourself. And in terms of retention, in terms of really helping that piece of information to stay with you, by creating that experience around the learning, really helps with that, helps to facilitate that.
Yeah, I think also beyond just the retention thing, it helps you to get the resources that you need, and to kind of build that mentality that when there's a challenge that you overcome it in a sense. So you're building, because we were talking about real world English. So if you're using your English in the real world, maybe you're in a situation where there's not even a teacher around, you're having a business meeting, or you're helping out a tourist on the street, or whatever the case is, where you're not going to know some word, and so you need to be able to kind of like put the pieces together in a sense to figure out, how can I still communicate my message? And I think that's really what fluency is in some sense, is when you're able to kind of have those resources of, I don't know the exact word, but I can explain it another way, or I can figure out some way to communicate this to you so that the message is not lost.
Yeah, it's about empowering our students, or empowering yourself to be able to solve those problems, when you need to, because by only relying on having a teacher there to answer your problem or answer your questions, obviously that isn't a real experience, unless that person happens to be, there are a few of us who have a partner who might speak the language that we're trying to learn, and in that case maybe that person is often with you. But for the majority, we have to find ways of overcoming this and solving that problem ourselves.
Right.
And I think that the experience of engaging in a language is made so much richer when you step outside of the classroom or the teacher-student environment. The part that's missing in a standard teacher classroom experience is that longevity, that motivation to keep continually showing up.
Okay.
And, you know, it's hard to do that in a really traditional environment. But if you start pulling the experiences, the topics, the interests that you have towards your learning experience, it becomes, and of course then you start connecting with others who are equally as passionate or interested in that thing as you, then it becomes so much easier to continually show up, to then make progress and to be inspired by and supported by people around you who are doing similar things. And I think that, you know, that is one of the hacks, I think, of the 21st century with language learning. It's about getting the heck out of a classroom and around pulling the things that you need to make your experience richer towards you.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great insight. I think it's really a paradigm shift too, because so many learners, when they think about using the language, they're thinking about, I need to find a practice partner, or I need to find a native that I can speak with, or even like I need to get a teacher. And instead, if you're shifting with what you're saying, which I totally agree with, is you're shifting your focus instead to connecting with other people who have the same interest and actually living your interests, living your passions with English as the vehicle to do that. And I think that when you're able to do that, then, you know, you're kind of transcending English as a language, and you're using it really as a tool to connect to the world and to live the life that you really want to live.
The worst thing that could happen, you could say something completely wrong and mess it up.
Yeah.
And you can look at that and be completely mortified at that situation. But you can also look at that and think that in that moment, in the heat of the moment, when you are sweating, when, you know, you're shaking, you're really nervous, that is the moment where you're pinning an experience to your, like, it's hardwiring into your brain. You make that mistake there, it's unlikely that you will ever make it again, because you'll have this reference point from that moment on. Okay, don't do that, you know, or, you know, at least you have the opportunity, if you make that mistake, to think about it and know how to get out of it next time, or what to do in that situation, because you've had that experience. And, you know, that is what learning is all about. It's about building that experience slowly over time. If you don't step out there into that space, you don't get to have that experience. You can't, you know, you can't watch and observe that and then know exactly what to do in that situation when you find yourself in it. So, you know, to some extent, I'm always telling my students, if you feel that fear, that is the moment to step forward into that fear rather than stepping back. And that can be really hard to do at times.
It is, yeah.
It's super hard to do. But doing so knowing that that decision is taking you one step closer to where you need to go, no matter what happens, whether it's a complete flop or 9 times out of 10, it actually turns out better than you're expecting.
That's true, yeah.
You know, then you've taken one step, and there are many more to go, but you've taken one and you're on your way.
Exactly. And that total like reframing of it too. If you get in a conversation and someone laughs or they don't understand you, you can look at that as like, you know, I'm just going to close up here and not say anything else. Or you can say like, why was that funny? Or, you know, or try to take, if they didn't understand, take that as an opportunity to re-explain. And that's what I tend to do is try to understand, okay, why was that funny? And then I can avoid that next time. And a lot of times when that happens too, I end up laughing at myself. It's like, oh yeah, that is really funny.
That's a hugely important part of learning a language and learning to interact with someone else who is different or has had a different experience in the world. It's not just stereotypes and understanding that our perspective is just one perspective on a certain situation, but it's also, like, more practically, it's about learning the tools or having the resources to deal with that in your second language. And for all of our English learners, that's a huge challenge. Not only is it awkward and uncomfortable for you and I to deal with disagreements or a different opinion in our own native language, but then to be trying to navigate that in a second or third language, sometimes it's not even the fact that there's a disagreement or that it's just that it's unclear, or the other person is, feeling a little uncomfortable about something because they don't understand, or they don't have the tools that they need in the language to help get themselves out of that situation comfortably, approaching a conversation with curiosity rather than questioning. And, but it's always going to be a challenge because there's, long-standing conflict, there's, racism, there's all sorts of darker aspects of what it is to connect as people on our planet and to be different and to experience the world differently. So it's really about giving those functional expressions to use in that situation.
Yeah, that's really cool. I really admire what you are doing there, because you said you're not sweeping those kind of things under the rug, but you're actually saying, how can we turn this into a productive conversation? And maybe you won't always see eye to eye, right? But at least that you can, like what you said about being curious before you're being judgmental. And I think really in order to be a global citizen, in a sense, to be able to speak real world English, it's not just developing the language skills, but in so much, it's also just developing the skills to be a good listener and to ask questions and to put yourself in that other person's shoes before judging them and not letting your emotions kind of take hold of you. And even just questioning your own place in the world and, how much veracity there is in the beliefs that you have. So that's really fascinating that you've been able to find different tools to do this in your community.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a lesson for anyone, not just anyone learning English, but any human on the planet. But hopefully the opportunity of lots of diversity in English speakers will help to, bring some of that out even in the native English speaking population as well.
So remember that you can continue getting inspired with Emma by listening to the full interview. That's linked down below. And while you're at it, you might want to check out the RealLife app so that you can listen with the full transcript for free and speak English with other learners at the touch of a button. You'll also find that linked in the description below. And now it's time to go beyond the classroom and live your English. Aw, yeah.
I am my worst critic, and I think for a very long period of time, I had a really hard time accepting the fact that I was different, but I couldn't see that difference as being a differential. I couldn't see that as, hey, you know what? I'm different. That's actually better.